Hi, friends. I'm Karen, and this is the Family Food for Moms podcast. We're talking about inspiration for family cooking and dining. Today, we're going to be talking about puff pastry. Puff pastry is that flaky, light, airy pastry which is made by folding and rolling the dough with lots of layers. So folding the butter in, then folding it in half again, rolling with the rolling pin. So it's a real crowd pleaser because it's delicious and it's so easy for quick appetizers, for elegant desserts, and it's very distinctive as far as pastry goes because of its light, flaky texture. So you do get crescent roll pastry, you get philo pastry, but puff is the best kind to buy because it's so delicious. And it's good to buy all butter puff pastry, much healthier than the margarine kind. So today I'm going to tell you the history of puff pastry and then some ideas of what you can cook with it. Very easy and a great way to do something fast. I know Trader Joe's has an all butter puff pastry. Puff pastry dates back to many centuries ago. It's kind of European Mediterranean, a bit of Middle East. So ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome did an early version of a layered dough. So not as refined as modern puff pastry because their tools were different and they used oil instead of butter. So it didn't puff quite as much as we know today. Philo pastry was used in the Middle East, in Turkish and Greek cooking, and is still today. So that's also layers, but you layer them. It's individual pieces that you would layer. You'd use 3 or 4 pieces of phyllo and then some oil in between and then your filling. Whereas puff pastry, you use a single sheet and that puffs up because it's already been layered in its folding and rolling time. So somebody called Claude Gillet, he is credited with inventing puff pastry in the 1600s. The story goes that he was attempting to make a type of bread for his father who was ill and then accidentally created the puffing effect by encasing the butter between layers of dough. So France had a central role in creating this pastry and refining it. A French chef who was the author of Le Cuisinier Francois, something like that, is one of the first who describes something resembling the puff pastry in writing. So France became the hub of puff pastry and its techniques. Layering the dough in the butter, the technique was perfected. And it became very well known like haute cuisine, high cuisine, and it was used in both savory and sweet dishes. So puff pastry characteristics are the folding of the layers of dough and the butter repeatedly, and then it's leavened with steam. So the puff is created by steam from the butter and moisture in the dough. So that's why you need a really hot oven to puff it up when you bake it. So there's no yeast in it, there's no leavening of any kind. Also, it's quite labor intensive. The dough is folded and rolled multiple times, usually 6 times, to produce those hundreds of thin layers that are going to puff up. So it relies on its moisture and its fat content to make it effective. It's used in everything from fast food items like turnovers to gourmet desserts. And nowadays you can buy it frozen. I like to buy the flat kind. You get 2 sheets of puff pastry that you can just defrost a little bit and then roll out. I find the one that's rolled often cracks when it's defrosting. You have to make sure to defrost it really well before you try and flatten it. Otherwise, it can crack or just not be as effective. So one of our favorite easy things to make with puff pastry, we call puff pastry tarts or tartlets. And you basically take a piece of puff pastry and you cut it into 9 or maybe 12 pieces and then, like squares. And then you put those into a shallow muffin tray, maybe a little bit of grease, put them into the muffin tray. And then on top, you can put some steamed butternut and feta with a bit of rosemary, or some cherry tomatoes sliced in half with a bit of mozzarella, or again feta, a bit of rosemary or oregano, and some salt. And then you put them in a really hot oven, like probably over 200 Celsius or 400 Fahrenheit, a little bit over that. And then you put it in for about 10 minutes. It puffs up nicely and it makes an amazing little appetizer you can try. Then for dessert, you just take another piece of puff pastry, use a pastry brush to put some butter on, and then you sprinkle it with cinnamon sugar and you bake that. And that's a great little easy dessert. Some other things you can do with puff pastry, cheese straws are a great one. You can do a variety of flavors. So you take one little strip of puff pastry and then you can put something like basil pesto or tomato paste on there and then some cheese, and then you put another piece of pastry on top and then you twist them into little turns and then you bake them until they're golden. And those are amazing little cheese straws you can try. Puff pastry is great as a base for tarts or quiches. It's a good idea probably to bake them a little bit first until they're mostly done and then put the filling, because especially that underneath part won't be very nice otherwise. Things like sausage rolls. It's a British thing. You wrap some kind of sausage meat that's been well seasoned. You can even take some sausages in their casing, cut them open along the side, and then take out the filling and maybe check if you need any more seasoning by frying up a little bit and tasting it. And then when it's ready, you just put it in a roll shape and you roll the puff pastry around it and you bake it. You can do the famous or infamous beef Wellington, Gordon Ramsay style, where you wrap a beef fillet or beef tenderloin, which is coated with some sort of mushroom puree and something like, what's that meat? Prosciutto. And then you wrap the puff pastry around the outside. Luxurious main course. Empanadas. You fill puff pastry with meats, vegetables, or even cheese. It's like a little handheld pie. Or you can put caramelized onions, olives on top or inside. If you just use it as a base or as a wrap to fill, it's really easy to just be creative. I think before we've done cooked ground beef or mince with cheese and then wrap that in puff pastry into a little pie. Then for sweet dishes, apple turnovers. You fill a square of puff pastry with spiced apple slices and then you seal it and you bake it. So similar, but just a sweet dessert. You can add some cinnamon in there. Elephant ears, you sprinkle cinnamon and sugar on the puff pastry, roll it into a heart shape, and then bake until that's caramelized. Fruit tarts, you top your puff pastry with pastry cream and then fresh fruits like berries or peaches. The Napoleon, you layer your baked pieces of puff pastry with custard or whipped cream and maybe berries, and then you top it with icing sugar. You can do a puff pastry version of cinnamon rolls. So spread them with melted butter, sugar, and cinnamon, and then roll and slice and bake. And then they don't need to rise. It'll be a quick version of a cinnamon roll. Then jam puffs. You put a small amount of jam onto your puff pastry square and then fold and bake, or you can even leave it open. Churros, you can pipe strips of puff pastry dough into hot oil and then fry them or bake them and dust with sugar. That's a cheat kind of churro. Puff pastry pizza would be very different but delicious. You can spread your tomato paste or sauce, add your cheese and your toppings on a puff pastry sheet and bake it for a quick pizza that doesn't need to rise. Pinwheels, so you spread fillings like ham and cheese, spinach and feta, and then you roll up, slice it, and bake it. Baked brie is delicious. You wrap a wheel of brie in puff pastry and bake that. You could add jam or nuts on top. Bake until the cheese is gooey and the pastry is crispy. So when you're working with puff pastry, it's a good idea to keep it cold. So you let it defrost, but not too much, because working with chilled puff pastry helps to maintain its layers, and then you just put it back in the fridge if it gets too soft. Adding an egg wash is also helpful, makes it golden and glossy and crispy. And then lightly scoring the edges or the base, or pricking the base, that makes it not puff up too much when you don't want it to. As I mentioned, baking it at high heat to ensure the layers rise and crisp up. Here's a fun idea. Take a couple of muffin trays and make little puff pastry cups in the muffin tin places. Score or prick the bottom of those a little so they don't puff up too much in the oven. So you make your little baked cups, and then you can fill with chocolate mousse, with ice cream, fruit and cream, and it's a delicious way to be able to eat your cup at the end. And then a last delicious use is to make a wreath for Christmas time or some kind of holiday wreath. So you shape your puff pastry into a ring, and then you cut the center diagonally in a few places so that you've got little pieces to fold over. So, sorry, I meant you cut it into a circle, and then you place your fillings all the way around the edge in a thin ring. Then you cut the center diagonally in a few places like little pizza slices up to the place where your filling starts, and then you flap those over outwards. So there's little gaps, but it's basically a covered wreath with some kind of filling like pine nuts and goat's cheese or ricotta with jam, something delicious like that. So just some fun ideas. Maybe you have your own ways of using puff pastry. It's just such a great pastry for when you want something quickly. If you need a party appetizer, or if someone's coming over and you want to add something elegant to the meal, it's really easy to make dishes look so good. And the taste is amazing. You can basically put anything with puff pastry and it will taste good. Just remember to do it at a hot temperature so it puffs up, and to season whatever you put on there. Especially something like ricotta, butternut, it needs salt. Or you can add the feta to add that salty flavor. So thanks for listening. I will see you next time. Have fun with some puff pastry.